geeks and geekettes, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, gats and kittens, comic fans the world over. Welcome to an Ask Chuck Dixon Extra. I realized that this week's Ask Chuck Dixon was a little short, 28 minutes. I never know how long these things are going to be. I get the questions. I try to ballpark guess how long the broadcast is going to be, but, whatever. What I'm trying to say is there's not a lot of formatting being done here. This is all willy-nilly, seat of my pants, one-man operation. It's just you and me talking. You know what I mean? And I don't know how long the ride's going to last. So I'm giving you a little extra this week on one subject, Knightfall. And actually, this forms sort of a purpose because I'm gonna entertain some questions that I get asked a lot. These are questions I get asked most often. These are questions I've answered over and over and over again on Ask Chuck Dixon. So if you are a regular Ask Chuck Dixon listener, you might just want to skip this episode because you've already heard these answers. And I'm going to give the same answers I always give. So there you go. We're going to talk about Knightfall. Hold on just 1 second. Okay, I'm back. Anyway, let's get to the first one. Andre Santana. What a name. That's a great name, my friend. Were you asked to create Bane for Knightfall, or was it your idea without the event? No, Bane was very much tied to the Knightfall event. This is the question I get asked more than anything else about the creation of Bane. So I'm going to go into some depth here. And maybe I'll never have to answer this question again. Look, I don't mind answering questions over and over again because people go, oh, how can you do that answer? Well, maybe it's the first time you're hearing it. Maybe it's the first time you asked it, right? So I want to invite you to ask questions here. I don't want to go, oh, this question again. And it's a story, it's a fun story. Anyway, Denny O'Neil presented Knightfall to us at a Bat Summit. And he had several goals with Knightfall, and the goals increased as we went along. But the goal was to basically create an event as big as Death of Superman. He was under some pressure from DC. In fact, I learned recently that Knightfall was actually in the works before Death of Superman, and Denny was asked to put it off, so they wouldn't have two big, huge events with their two biggest characters going on at the same time. So Denny did, and I didn't know that. I watched an interview with Denny O'Neil recently in which he revealed that he was playing around with the idea for Knightfall. Now, Knightfall probably became a much bigger event because of Death of Superman, because you remember, Death of Superman was a couple of years of continuity. And so Denny sort of amped it up, so that this thing would last longer. So, in the end, we, 2.5 years of continuity. It was very, very successful, just as, and possibly a little bit more successful than Death of Superman. So, so that was the number one goal, to create this big Batman event. The other thing is that it would be a watermark event, a landmark event for Batman, that it would alter the Batman universe, not beyond recognition, but more in a nuanced way. Secondly, the goal was to tell a terrific story. That was Denny's big thing, tell a terrific story. And the other goal was to create a new villain, a brand new villain that would have legs. This villain would last beyond the event. Because we were going to create a villain who finally brought down Batman. So, of course, he had to be cool. The readers had to accept him. They had to adopt him as a guy they love to hate, enough so that he would join Batman's permanent rogues gallery. Now, that's a tall order. And from the very beginning, I was the one saying, that's a tall order. We're going to have to create a character that everybody accepts, that everybody likes, that everybody thinks is really cool. And, if we could do that all the time, we'd be multimillionaires. It's like, in comics, you kind of throw things against the wall and hope people like it. Or in some cases, you create a character. I'm thinking Silver Surfer, I'm thinking Wolverine, I'm thinking my own spoiler, create a character and just throw it out there, not having any expectations, and the readers go crazy over it. So you just never know. You just never know. I thought, well, how do we capture that juice? How do we make that happen for Bane? And eventually reached a point where Denny got sick and tired of me carping about it. And he said, okay, if you think it's going to be so damn hard, go do it. Just go do it. Okay. And the only provisos was that he be addicted to venom, a chemical stimulant, narcotic, whatever, created by Denny in an earlier run in Legends of the Dark Knight, an earlier arc, and that he be Batman's intellectual and physical equal, because we couldn't have some schlub, some Joe Chill character come along and take Batman down. It had to be somebody really spectacularly special and devious and strong and smart and all the rest of it. And those are really the only provisos. Also, that he that somehow the prison island of Santa Prisca be involved as well. And so basically, I went home, started thinking about it, and with all those things in mind, and the first thing I thought about was Man in the Iron Mask. If it's going to be a prison story, then Bane would be this mystery figure within the prison, this man of mystery. And that's where I went first. Alexander Dumas. You can't do much better than going back to Alexander Dumas. So, with that in mind, I remembered a story I had read in the newspaper about how in North Korea you could be sentenced to a relative's. You could be sentenced to prison for a relative's crimes. So, in other words, if the North Koreans couldn't catch your mom or dad, they'd put you in prison. It's like guilt by relation. And I thought, wow, what would that be like? Would they arrest a child? Would they stick a child in prison? What would that guy turn out like? And I thought, whoa, wait a minute. What if this character is born in prison? He's born to a life sentence. And that's when I called Graham. I called Graham Nolan because we had been assigned to do the origin story, what turned out to be Vengeance of Bane #1. So I knew I'd be working with Graham, and I wanted his thoughts, because Graham's a terrific writer on his own. He's a good story guy, and he would give me the visual hooks. And first thing he did was suggest, if this guy is from Central America and Central or South America, what about a Mexican wrestler luchadora look? And I'm like, yeah, that works great, because that look would allow us to show off his muscles, and more importantly, show off the transformation of his muscles. Him getting more swole as he injects venom. And then we talked a little bit about how would that work, and it was Graham who suggested that he have a device that would deliver venom, right into his veins, and he would be able to control it. Basically dial it up or dial it down. Kind of like the way some pain medications work now. Localized pain medications, where the patient can decide how much or how little of the painkiller they get. And so then I just started talking out loud. What about this? What about that? What do you think about this? And we just sort of hashed it out. So I got off the phone. I had a pretty good idea who this guy was. Within hours, Graham faxed me. Remember fax machines? Faxed me a model sheet, or an initial drawing, and then a model sheet for Bane and what he would look like. And pretty much what he looks like now, except in his original version, his mouth and eyes were exposed. He looked very much more like a Mexican wrestler than he would eventually when we gave him the mask that hid his features. So, but everything else is the same. The venom delivery system, the black singlet, the black, paratrooper pants and paratrooper boots, and the Venom delivery system. It was all there in Graham's initial drawings. Now, armed with that, I sort of, put together this origin story for him. But first, we needed a name. Now, our working name for this villain that was going to break Batman's back was Doc Toxic. That's just what we were calling him. Nobody liked that name. And so I did what I usually do when I'm trying to come up with a name. I went to Roget's Thesaurus. I looked up evil. And there was Bane, a synonym for evil. And I thought, Bane, that's cool. That's memorable. So I called. It was Scott Peterson answered the phone up at the DC offices. And I said, I want to call this guy Bane. I said, Bane, Bane, synonymous with evil. And he said, I don't like that idea. And he basically, I think he turned to Jordan Gorfinkel and Darren Vincenzo and told them, and they didn't like it. They were all meh about that name. And I said, well, okay, well, then you guys come up with something better. Now, 3 days later, we were all calling him Bane. It's kind of like when you name a pet. I don't know if I like that name. And then 3 days later, it's Sparky. Come here, Sparky. So they adopted the name Bane. And then it was up to me to begin putting this origin story together of, the horrible things that happened to Bane as a child that turned him into the monster that he became. And one of the things I thought about was this villain should have a persona that grows out of a childhood trauma, so that he kind of matches Bruce Wayne. Bruce Wayne, Bruce Wayne's Batman persona is a answer to a childhood trauma. It's therapeutic, I guess, running around on rooftops, beating up bad guys. So that's how he dealt with it. How does Bane deal with his childhood trauma is he's got to be in charge. He's got to be in control. He is the ultimate alpha male, and Venom pushes it even beyond that. And so he has to become the king of the Santa Prisca prison, even before getting the Venom. And once he gets the Venom, he's, he gets out of there. And now what's he going to do? He wants to become king of the world. And then I introduced that he had dreams of this demonic creature that was haunting him. And it was in the form of a bat. And he hears about Batman. He hears about Gotham City, which we can just presume is the biggest city in the DCU, which make it the biggest city in the DC universe version of the United States. And Bane decides, I'm going to be king of that. I'm going to go to Gotham City. I'm going to literally face my demon and become king of Gotham City and ultimately the world. And Bane is bent on not conquering the world like Hitler or Stalin. He wants to conquer the underworld. He wants to be global lord of crime. That's his ultimate goal. And those were all things I thought, well, this is going to give him legs because he has designs. He has designs beyond Gotham. He has designs. I mean, he's going to be a major player. In his mind, he wants to be a major player in the world of the DC universe of villainy. And that'll help give him legs. Of course, I never, ever anticipated Bane would become a household name. He would be mentioned on The Simpsons. It's never occurred to me. I just thought, hey, if he could stick around for a few years and show up again and again as a recurring foe for Batman, but no idea he would become, literally hundreds of action figures and statues and gewgaws and keychains and, who knows what else. So there you have it, the exhaustive history of Bane. Now, next question. Ben E. Bennett. I love Knightfall. I love the lead up to it. I love Vengeance of Bane, etc. One thing that really terrified me as a kid, I could handle it more as an adult, but it's still creepy, is how Bane was watching Batman. It started off normal, but as Batman was going through the gauntlet, it felt more and more like watching a wounded animal before he was broken. Yes, he continues, during the planning sessions, did you or any of the other Batman writers, artists, editors, etc., at one point say, this is really going to upset the readers? I am not complaining in any way, but to this day, watching how Bane and his henchmen were just hunting and stalking him, it still gives me chills. I love the story, no doubt, but to this day, it still makes me nervous despite knowing the outcome of the story and the follow-up. Sorry for the rant. I am still a longtime fan. Well, thank you. Thank you very much for that. Hold on, what am I doing here? Okay. Hey, we succeeded in our plan. if we made you feel that way, that's what we wanted you to feel. Before you or any other fans were aware that Knightfall was happening, we were setting it up. We were wearing Batman down. If you remember the story where Bane helps the Arkham Asylum inmates escape. And I wrote, myself and Doug Mensch and Alan Grant, we wrote lots of stories, like in the 3 months leading up to the beginning of Knightfall, about Batman being just torn down, being driven to exhaustion. His every waking moment, and he had very few sleeping moments in this, was trying to bring order back to Gotham. And he took all of this on his shoulders, and it made him weaker. And the whole time Bane and his henchmen are watching and stalking, and we very much wanted you to know, hey, something's coming. There's this mystery figure behind this, and he's gonna, his intention is to bring Batman down for good. And then Knightfall begins. If you don't know the story of Knightfall, Bane eventually catches up with Batman, breaks his back, disables him, and completely disables him, fractures his spine, and the role of Batman is taken over by John Paul Vallée, who we called Asbats, and he proves to be a horrible choice because he's psychotic. He's a bit of a religious zealot. He's a real dark guy, and he takes things way too far. And ultimately, Azrael and the real Batman, when Bruce Wayne returns, have to have it out. And that's pretty much Knightfall. Yes, lots of other things happen in between, and it's a huge deal, but that's the spine of the story. It's a hell of a spine of a story. Now, when Denny laid it out to us, it was obviously in more detail, and there were all these great dramatic high points that were right there for all of us to use, and what just made it a joy to work on. Now, in prelude to Knightfall, we had to set all these characters up. Now, Denny wrote a mini-series featuring Azrael, drawn by Joe Quesada, and it set this character up. It set up Jean Paul Vallée so that we weren't just pulling a guy off the street to become Batman. So it set that up, created some curiosity as to who is this guy? What's the significance? We made it very clear. Denny made it very clear in the miniseries that Azrael would play a part in the Batman universe. What part? Who knows? And of course, Graham and I did Vengeance of Bane to fully set up Bane as a villain, so you would totally understand his motivations, understand who he is, and more important, understand how dangerous he was and what a threat he would be to Batman, and scary. And if we scared you and still give you chills as an adult, that's what we want to do. And we wanted to really make people think that, in exhausting Batman, eventually breaking Batman, that he wasn't coming back. Bruce Wayne wasn't coming back. Denny said, we'll succeed in this if we can fool the readers or make the readers believe that this is a sea change in Batman. Much the same way that Kyle Rayner replaced Green Lantern, and Wally West replaced Flash, and Connor Hawke replaced Green Arrow. They would think, wow, they're actually going to replace Batman. We're going to have a new Batman. Now, the other thing, the goal that grew out of this, and a number of us brought this up, was well, this is an opportunity to show everybody, fans that think that Batman should be, first of all, lethal. Batman should be a loner. He shouldn't have sidekicks and things like that. This would be to show them, hey, you're wrong. We're going to give you the Batman you think you want in John Paul Vallée. And you're not going to like it. You're not going to like it. And they didn't. They didn't. Readers hated John Paul Vallée to the point where sales began to fall. And we had to end the event a little bit earlier than we would have, because people hated this guy. We thought they would stay for the compelling story. but after a few months, they'd had enough of him. So we had to start planning for Batman's return. We didn't want to rush our story because we had all these things like Night Quest and all that follow. We didn't want to rush Bruce Wayne's story, which led to Prodigal. So it allowed Batman, a more acceptable Batman in the form of Dick Grayson, to take the place of John Paul Vallée. And that's how that all happened. I don't. Prodigal was never a part of this from the beginning. The Prodigal arc, where Dick Grayson becomes Batman for a few months, was never part of this. It was a stopgap so that we could continue what we had planned as Bruce Wayne's saga to go out, another 6 months. So there you go, looking behind the scenes. Now, the very first summit that I went to was the roll-up to Knightfall. And part of that was creating a new Batman title for Alan Grant. Now, why we were creating a new title, I had no idea. But we were creating a new title, and what were we going to call it? And some really horrible suggestions. Denny suggested Annals of the Bat. Annals, like, volumes of the Bat. Annals of the Bat, or the Legend of the Bat. But it was Annals of the Bat, and it was Scott Peterson, of course, who said, some of our less literate readers might not understand that title. They might pronounce Annals another way, and we don't want that. Eventually came up with Shadow of the Bat. I don't know. I just remember Alan just sitting there, like, letting everybody throw names for his book at him. And he was just like, okay, whatever. He didn't care what it was called. He just wanted us to stop talking about the title. So we came up with Shadow of the Bat. Alan, you like that? Yeah, that's great. And we went with it. At the same time, of course, Doug was regular writer on Batman. And he was doing all this stuff to lead up to Knightfall, exhausting Bruce Wayne and the rest of it. And what I found out that afternoon is that I was going to become the regular detective writer if I wanted it. We were spent all this time talking about this new book we were going to create. And we broke for lunch, and then he said, would you like to take over detective? And I said, yes. I really would like to. And because up to that point, I'd only ever written Robin. I'd written one 3-issue arc in Batman. But all of my other work at DC up to that point was Robin. And I thought, oh, I'm the Robin guy. I didn't even know why I was at the summit. I was like, why am I here? If anybody has a question about Robin, and if anybody had a question about Tim Drake, Alan Grant could answer it, because he did an awful lot of development on Tim Drake. But anyway, I get detective, and I become part of this thing of wearing down Batman. And, good times. And so, we eventually get to the point where not only, that Graham is not only did The Vengeance of Bane #1, but he becomes my regular Detective Comics artist, which I just couldn't be happier about, because we had been friends for years. We had worked together quite a bit, and we were on the same page about almost everything. And I really wanted Graham on the title because I was the one who suggested him, because Graham is just a Batman scholar. I mean, I'm a Batman fan. You're a Batman fan if you're listening to this. You like Batman and everything else. Well, Graham is a walking college of knowledge on Batman. He knows everything about the character. And so I could, he would come up with stuff, or he would correct me when I thought it was wrong, or say, well, okay, this is okay, but what if we did this? And he was all in on creating new gadgets and vehicles and all the rest of it, because we were both into the lore. Our dream was to create a bat boat that made sense. Because where do you park the bat boat? I mean, you could follow a bat boat, and eventually he came up with a submersible that would come out of the cave, come right out of the bat cave through an underground river into Gotham Harbor. But we came up with it too late to include it in Detective, but we eventually included it in Bane Conquest, the maxi series of Bane we did later. So, so yeah, I mean, I had a great partner. I had the best partner in the world to work with me on Batman, and we had a blast. And those were golden days. Those were golden days, getting to work with Denny and Archie and Scott and Darren and Jordan, and of course, getting to work with the Doug and Alan. I mean, just fantastic comic book writers, legends in their own right. And also pictured here, you see Graham Nolan giving the thumbs up there in the middle. This is before he was exposed to gamma radiation. And Jim Ballant over there on the left giving a thumbs up. I think I've named everybody in the picture. And just to fill you in on what this picture was, we were picking the new costume because we were going to make a costume change when Bruce Wayne returned. And we had all of this art by all of these artists who presented their version of what they thought Batman should look like going forward. And we were all real tired, and we were staying for the first time, we had a Bat Summit at a really crappy hotel that Denny had chosen. We never forgave him for it. It was much like the Overlook in The Shining. We were the only ones there. Just like in The Shining, we were the only ones there. We outnumbered the hotel staff at the point. It was like definitely off season. And they were always late bringing the coffee. We woke up, we're grumpy, and we gotta have this meeting where we choose the costume. And we're like, we're not really into it. The artwork's great and everything else, but it was like, and we're all sitting there. And for the longest time, and this was unusual to Bat Summit, there was this long, prolonged silence where no one said anything. And we're just sort of sitting there grumpy, waiting for our coffee. And Archie's like he's down on the floor like this, and he's looking through all the different art. And he looks up at us, and he's like a kid on Christmas morning. And he goes, I don't know about you guys, this is really cool. We're getting to pick Batman's new costume. And just as Archie always did, he lifted the mood of the room. and the day was better after that. For Archie having said that, it's like, we're basically saying, remember what we are, guys. We're fan geeks at heart. We're getting to choose the Batman costume. How freaking lucky are we to be these guys in this room at this time? So that's one thing I got to say about my years on Batman is I knew at the time I was really lucky. This was a golden era for me, and I was getting to work with some awesome people and having a lot of fun and given a lot of freedom and working with people that had faith in my abilities. And hopefully I rose to their expectations. But those were great days. So that's a lot about Knightfall. That's a lot about Bane. I hope you enjoyed it, this little extra. And I'll see all of you down the road.